Greetings, and welcome to Short Stories. Today's short story is based on a classic tale called Cinderella. Cinderella is a story about a young servant girl who loses a shoe and marries a prince. This exact plot has popped up numerous times in cultures all over the world. For example, the ancient Greek geographer Strabo recorded a story about a young girl who lost a sandal and married the king of Egypt. But perhaps the most famous version of the story is the one written by Charles Perrault in 1697. It's this version of the story that became the basis for the 1950 Disney film. The version you will hear today is a mixture of the Perrault version and the Grimm version. Personally, I like the Grimm version more because, like most German fairy tales, it has a bloody ending. I have also added in some historical elements just for fun. Enjoy! Vocabulary: ambitious, ambitious. The ambitious politician planned to run for the presidency. Humiliation, humiliation. The Miami Marlins suffered the humiliation of yet another defeat. At someone's mercy, at someone's mercy. The prisoners are at the mercy of the warden. Status, status. Ambitious people often worry about their status in society. Dissipate, dissipate. The smell of the 3-bean burrito dissipated after an hour. Clever, clever. Zhuge Liang was a very clever tactician. Make a beeline for. Make a beeline for. At parties, he always makes a beeline for the buffet. What's the big idea? What's the big idea? What's the big idea? Who told you to let the dogs out? The story. There once was a wealthy nobleman named Count Welf. He had a daughter named Judith, who was very much like her mother, kind and bright. Sadly, Judith's mother died, and the Count remarried. His second wife was not like Judith's mother. She was cold and ambitious. She was also a widow with 2 daughters of her own. Her daughters, although beautiful on the outside, were ugly on the inside. They liked to tease Judith and make her do chores for them. Their mother approved of this and decided to make Judith their maid-in-waiting, which was a humiliation for a nobleman's daughter. Count Welf was a member of Charlemagne's court, which meant that he was rarely at home. Because of this, Judith was often at her stepmother's mercy. As time went by, the stepmother's cruelty increased. She made Judith work very hard in the kitchen. She worked such long hours that she often slept in the ashes next to the stove. For this reason, the wicked stepsisters nicknamed her Cinderella. One day, Count Welf returned home for a short visit. He asked his daughters what gifts they wanted him to bring back from the royal palace in Reims. The first stepsister said, "Bring me the finest silk dress." The second stepsister said, "Bring me diamonds and pearls." When the Count asked Cinderella, she said, "Bring me, dear father, the first sprig that rubs against your hat on your way home." So when Count Welf returned from his trip, he gave his 3 daughters their gifts. He gave the first stepsister a fine silk dress. He gave the second stepsister a necklace made with diamonds and pearls. And he gave Cinderella, a sprig of hazel. Cinderella took this sprig out to the family graveyard and buried it above her mother's grave. Cinderella knelt down and prayed, and as she prayed, she cried bitter-sweet tears, which fell upon the sprig of hazel. When Cinderella returned the next day, she was shocked to discover that the sprig had turned into a tree with a nest of doves living in it. Cinderella took this as a sign of good things to come. The next day the Count returned with some exciting news. "The king wishes his son to get married," he announced. "He will hold a masquerade ball in Reims next week. All the eligible noblewomen of the kingdom are welcome to attend." The wicked stepmother and her daughters all smiled. "This is tremendous news," said the stepmother. She was excited by the idea that one of her daughters could marry the prince and one day become queen. "This will improve my family's status very much," she thought. When Cinderella heard the news, she was excited by the idea of going to a party. "I've never been to a party before," she said to herself. Cinderella asked her stepmother if she could go to the ball too. The stepmother laughed. "Ha! You at the ball? That'll be the day." Cinderella insisted. "But I'm the daughter of a count, and that makes me a noblewoman. The royal announcement did specify all eligible noblewomen, didn't it?" The stepmother frowned. "I think it would be hilarious if Cinderella went to the ball," said one stepsister. "Everyone would laugh at her sweaty rags and dusty shoes," said the other stepsister. The stepmother smirked and said, "All right, you can go to the ball, but you have to pick up all of these beans first." Cinderella made a puzzled expression and asked, "What beans?" The stepmother grabbed the big pot of beans that Cinderella was preparing for dinner and dumped the contents onto the ash-covered floor. "These beans!" laughed the stepmother. The three wicked women had a good laugh at Cinderella's expense. They were still laughing as they left the room. Cinderella bowed her head in despair. "How will I ever get to the ball now?" she asked herself. After a few moments of sullen silence, she heard a bird chirping at the window. She looked out and saw the hazel tree above her mother's grave in the distance. She stepped up to the window and made this wish. "Hither, thither, through the sky, turtle doves and linnets fly, blackbird, thrush, and goldfinch gay. Hither, thither, haste away. One and all come help me quick. Haste ye, hasty, pick, pick, pick." Suddenly a flock of birds swooped into the kitchen. They all started picking up the beans off the floor and putting them into the pot. Cinderella stood there in amazement. She couldn't believe her eyes. In a few moments the birds were done and the pot was full once again. After washing the beans, Cinderella ran to her stepmother to show her what she had done. The stepmother couldn't believe it either. "Can I go to the ball now?" Cinderella asked eagerly. "No," was the stepmother's reply. "You cannot go. You have no suitable clothes. You cannot dance. You would only bring us shame." Cinderella was heartbroken once again. She wondered what she could do next. When everyone left for the ball, Cinderella was all alone in the house. She went sorrowfully out to the hazel tree and sat down. Looking up into the gentle branches, she called out this wish: "Shake, shake, hazel tree, gold and silver over me." The birds that were living in the tree flew out of their nest and brought forth a beautiful silver dress and a pair of gold slippers. "Wow!" exclaimed Cinderella. She excitedly put the clothes on. "They fit perfectly," she said. "But how will I get to the ball? I have no ride." The birds were listening and used their magic to turn a pumpkin into a beautiful carriage. The birds also turned 4 white mice into horses and a lizard into the coachman. "Thanks, birds!" shouted Cinderella. A dove flew down and landed on her shoulder. It said, "You're welcome. These are gifts from your fairy godmother, who was a personal friend of your mother. You may enjoy them until the moon is at its peak. After that, the spell will dissipate, and everything will turn back to normal." Cinderella asked the birds to pass her gratitude to her godmother before she set off for the royal ball. When Cinderella arrived at the ball, she was greeted by the usher, who gave her a party mask. She put it on and made her way to the dance hall. There was a line of young women waiting for a chance to dance with Prince Louis. Cinderella saw her stepsisters waiting in line, but before she could talk to them, she was pulled aside by a royal servant. "The prince would like to meet you. Come with me, please," said the servant rather curtly. Cinderella followed the servant to the front of the hall, where King Charlemagne and his son Louis sat on an elevated platform. Cinderella bowed low before them and said, "I am honored to be here. How may I serve you?" The prince smiled and said, "I saw your dress from afar and was taken aback by it. How did you know silver was my favorite color?" Cinderella rose, smiled, and said, "A little bird told me." The prince was smitten. He stepped down from his platform and asked her to dance. As they danced, they talked. As they talked, the prince fell deeper in love with the mysterious dancer. "How did you get to be so clever and charming?" asked the prince. "My mother taught me," was Cinderella's reply. Everyone watched as they danced. "Who is she?" asked the first stepsister. "Where did she get those shoes?" asked the second stepsister. The stepmother squinted and stared at the beautiful dancer. She was becoming suspicious. Cinderella was having such a wonderful time that she almost forgot about the spell. She looked out the window and saw how high the moon was. "Oh!" she exclaimed, "I really must go. Goodbye." Cinderella then made a beeline for the door. "Wait!" shouted the prince, but he found it difficult to chase her through the crowd. He couldn't catch his mysterious dance partner. All he found was one of her golden slippers on the steps of the palace. The next day, the prince made a royal proclamation. He would marry the girl whose foot fit the golden slipper he found. He traveled the kingdom searching for the slipper's owner. Many girls claimed to be the one, but they all failed the test. Meanwhile, Cinderella was back at work in the kitchen. She was fretting because the golden slipper had not disappeared along with the dress, the carriage, the horses, and the coachman. "Why are you still here?" she asked as she hid the shoe in her drawer. Cinderella did not hear the news about the royal proclamation because her stepmother intentionally kept it a secret. She watched Cinderella's movements carefully. While Cinderella was out feeding the pigs, the stepmother entered her room and rummaged through her drawers. She soon found the shoe. "I knew it!" she triumphantly declared. The stepmother sent a messenger to the prince. It didn't take long for the prince to arrive. "So, which one is my bride?" he asked the stepmother as he surveyed her two wicked daughters. The first stepsister stepped forward. "It's me," she announced. The prince ordered his servant to perform the shoe test. It barely fit, but the servant was very tired and said, "It's close enough." The prince had his doubts, but he was becoming discouraged by the search too. As he was escorting his new fiancée out the door, a little bird landed nearby and shouted, back again, look at the shoe! The shoe is too small and not made for you." The prince stopped and looked. He could see drops of blood falling from the golden shoe. The stepmother had found the shoe earlier and conspired with her daughters to cheat the test. She knew that neither of her daughters fit the shoe, so she ordered the first daughter to cut off her big toe, and the second to cut off part of her heel. The prince stormed back inside and said, "What's the big idea?" The stepmother looked surprised and said, "I apologize. My daughter was so desperate to marry you, I guess she got carried away. My other daughter is the one you want. She's your true bride." The servant performed the test again, and just as before, the little bird cried, back again, look at the shoe! The shoe is too small, and not made for you!" This time the prince was really mad. "You have the other shoe, so you must have another woman in this house. Tell me where she is, or I'll have you all hanged." Cinderella stepped forward, wiping the filth from her face. "What's going on?" she asked. The prince explained the situation and asked her to try on the shoe. Cinderella hesitated at first, but then she thought, maybe this is why the shoe didn't disappear. I'm supposed to marry the prince. She tried on the shoe, and it was a perfect fit. This time the little bird sang, "Prince, prince, take home thy bride, for she is the true one who stands by thy side." The prince rejoiced, for he knew that he had found his one and only. They were married the following spring. At the wedding, 2 doves sat on Cinderella's shoulders, cooing softly into her ears. Meanwhile, back at Count Welf's estate, 2 crows pecked out the eyes of Cinderella's evil stepsisters. Count Welf took this as a sign of a curse and decided to divorce the stepmother, leaving her and her blind daughters to beg in the streets. Questions. Number 1. How did Cinderella earn the help of her fairy godmother? A. She made a dress out of silver. B. She picked up all the beans. C. She killed her evil stepmother. D. She honored her dead mother. The answer is D. She honored her dead mother. Question 2. Who gave Cinderella her beautiful dress? A. Her stepmother. B. Her father. C. Some birds. D. She made it herself. The answer is C. Some birds. Question 3. Why did the stepsisters cut up their own feet? A. They wanted to marry the prince. B. They wanted the golden shoe to fit. C. Their mother told them to do it. D. All of the above. The answer is D. All of the above. They wanted to marry the prince. The shoe didn't fit, so their mother told them to cut up their feet so they could fit in the shoe, so they could marry the prince. Question 4. What is the lesson of the story? A. If you want to be happy in life, marry a rich guy. B. Blind ambition will get you nowhere. C. Birds are magical. D. Good guys finish last. The answer is B. Blind ambition will get you nowhere.